Hello and welcome to the August 5th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Market Report. My name is Tom Luongo. Hope everybody's having a good day. It is Sunday, and it's time to do a little bit of weekly review. So let's get right to it. All right. First thing I want to talk about this morning is Turkey. A lot going on with Turkey. As you all well know, I've been covering the ins and outs of what's been happening with Turkey relative to its position in the war in Syria for years now. And we've reached a point of almost no return between Turkish and American relations. The Turks came out this week earlier at the BRICS Alliance and said they wanted to become a part of the BRICS Alliance, making it like the BRICS. But it goes farther than that. There's also a diplomatic row happening between Turkey and the U.S. The Trump administration threatened sanctions against Turkey if they didn't return a pastor, and the Turks, and then we did so, or we're still threatening to do so. So the Turks turned around and threatened to do the exact same thing to American assets, freezing assets of American diplomats and State Department officials residing in Turkey, and continuing the escalation while President Erdogan of Turkey makes it abundantly clear that he's not bowing to pressure. Turkey is going to continue to buy Iranian oil. And there was also a small note out of Sputnik this week, which said that the Turks are now considering issuing yuan-denominated debt, sovereign debt. As the Lira breaks down, and as the United States puts more and more financial hybrid war-style pressure on Turkey to toe the line, Turkey is rapidly getting off the reservation, as it were. And this has huge implications going forward. Just massive geopolitical ramifications going forward. On top of that, there was another report, not confirmed by any stretch of the imagination, but it's out there in the press, and there's a reason why it's out there in the press, which is another report from Sputnik that the Chinese are considering moving in and supporting the Syrian Arab army's push to wipe up the resistance in Idlib, which is the last major area outside of the Kurdish-controlled space east of the Euphrates River that needs to be cleaned up in Syria. There's apparently Islamic Chinese Uyghur, I think that's how it's pronounced, Uyghur forces, rebels fighting alongside ISIS and basically Al-Qaeda. They keep changing their name every 6 months, and I refuse to keep up with the name changes. So we've got all that happening, and if China is interested or serious about moving troops in, this is the first time that they're willing to not just play kind of shadow banking benefactor behind the scenes in these regional conflicts, which usually Russia takes the military lead on, and certainly the diplomatic lead on. Now the Chinese are considering actually putting troops in theater. That changes everything. Now, on top of everything else, I still think that there's a grand bargain forming between the Trump administration and everybody else in the region, much to the chagrin and consternation and outrage of men like Bill Browder, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and others. It looks like the Israelis may finally be acceding to reality. Avigdor Lieberman, the defense minister there, made a note that things are beginning to calm down to the point where we can consider, backing off effectively. That Syria is stabilizing to the point where they can back off. Well, it's obvious that the Syrian army just retook all of the territory up to the 1974 ceasefire agreement line on the Golan Heights. Interesting that Lieberman would make that statement. While Iran stated quite unequivocally that they're willing to pull out of Syria under these conditions. And all of these conditions are the conditions that I've been talking about as a prerequisite for a grand bargain in the Middle East for over a year now. Okay, this all ties into, to some extent, the news this week that Lindsey Graham is pushing, along with John McCain, Ben Cardin, and a few others, who people I'm calling the Magnitsky Trio, are pushing for a new sanctions bill that's even worse than the ones we already have in order to try and stop the president from, one, pulling us out of NATO, which is not Congress's function. The president has authority to pull us out of any treaty. And now Lindsey Graham is trying to supersede the Constitution by requiring a 2/3 majority of the Senate in order to pull us out of NATO, which is unconstitutional. I was talking with Jim Jatras about this, and he's made it abundantly clear in one of his articles recently that this is blatantly unconstitutional. It's been the president's purview on foreign policy for the last 245 years or whatever it is, 229 years that the Constitution's been in force. No. Just seriously, no. So, but on top of everything else, they are also pushing a number between that sanctions bill and another bill that's going through Congress to try and stop the Nord Stream pipeline, to try and shut down Russia's ability to sell sovereign debt, to engage in any kind of energy projects around the world in any way. This is pure and utter desperation, and a lot of it's being led by that man you see right there, Bill fucking Browder. Pardon my French. This man needs to be behind bars. He's absolutely one of the most evil freaking people on the planet. He's a liar. He's a cheat. The man took $4.5 billion from the Russian people and then had the nerve to try and get out of paying the taxes on it as well, and was intimately involved in every respect in the attempted overthrow of the Russian government back in the 1990s, which brought Putin to power. And Putin coming to power is what actually caused the Russian state, the Russians to default in their bonds, and people like Browder and others lost a lot of money there. And so they're very angry with him, Putin, and that's why they want Russia destroyed. All of this is happening against the background of a rapidly cooling planet and a rapidly cooling and a rapidly heating up geopolitical background. I want to show you some charts about what's happening in the grain markets today, and I'm also going to show you some. Also going to talk briefly about the massive beatdown to end the month on Bitcoin. So let's get to the charts and let's get you out of here. All right. What we're seeing both in Bitcoin and in gold is a reflection of the geopolitical tensions. And we're seeing I don't have a chart for it this morning, but the euro is closed this week down right at support at $1.15.5. The counter trend rally in the euro back up towards $1.18 has failed, and it's now back right at support. Gold hit support at 1208. Bitcoin reversed its gains above 8,000, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happened. But to me, this is all part of the beginning of a real dollar liquidity squeeze in the market. We've seen the beginnings of it. I've been talking about it for months, but it's really starting to hit home. The probabilities, you can see the trading statistics today of where gold is on the weekly chart. The last one of these we did, I put up the numbers for the monthly chart. And you can see that this week we've got a pretty high probability of both a break of the previous low and a reversal, because this is now 4 weeks in a row that gold is closed down. That leads to about a 5 and 7 chance that gold will reverse here and put in an up week. That does not mean that gold will rally from here. It just means that it could put in an up week, meaning it'll close higher than it opens. And it's going to open this week at around 1222. That's all this means. But it's potential for us to violate 1200 in the short term. This could be the week that we get a panic bottom in gold. We'll see what happens. But this is where you are. So if you're interested in making some bets on gold, you might want to look for a panic. Panics in gold usually happen midweek, Tuesday or Wednesday. And since we're past all the future stuff for the month, because we're past options on futures expiration, we're into delivery. Once we're past, I think, I want to say Tuesday. We may see some strength in gold. So there may be some weakness to start the week, and then we'll move into some strength later in the week. And there's just usually a lot of hinky stuff around the time that COMEX deliveries happen in gold. All right, wheat. Let's talk about wheat. Wheat just hit a 1-year high over the course of the week, and then it corrected into Friday. But it still closed above the previous the previous high here, meaning this is a breakout bar, even though it's technically very bearish because of this huge tail. But, it just looks to me like the wheat market's getting ahead of itself. This is a downtrend. There's incredible support in the wheat market at around 500, which is effectively $5 a bushel. And then we have a solid breakout here, and then we have a close, just barely a close above this level at 554, and a weekly close above 574 will send the wheat market pushing much higher. There's a lot of reasons for this, and I think a lot of it has to do with the disruptions in weather cycles and whatnot that are happening around the world that we saw last year. I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to be a very cold winter up north, especially in Europe. Bodes well for natural gas prices. All the commodity space, other than the grains, are bearish right now. Oil, copper, nickel, lead, gold, silver, they're all bearish. Platinum, palladium, they're all bearish right now. Copper has reversed hard from its high earlier in the year. But the wheat market is rising. The soybean market is mixed because of supply chain stuff, but there's still underlying support there. The oat market is starting to break out. The corn market is starting to break out. It's a weird summer. Weather patterns are beginning to change and starting to reflect that in the grain price. So the wheat market is something I'm vaguely interested in for the portfolio going forward. I'm not sure what I want to do about that just yet. I may not do anything, but it is a reflection, I think, of what we're seeing in climate. And the climate does not get more violent as the planet gets warmer. Climate gets more stable as the planet gets warmer. Climate gets violent when the climate is changing, and the climate is changing for the worse. All right, and you can see you can see how volatile this week was. That there was a massive, there's such a massive volatility that the probability that this is going to be an inside bar this week is extremely high, and it'll probably be slightly bearish. And then we'll see that probably trend this way for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks in wheat. I don't expect to see a breakout above 600 for a few weeks here. I'm just telling you that this is significant price movement, and you can see it building in the chart for the last year. Okay. And then let's talk about Bitcoin real quick. So we had this massive and really nice technical breakout here on Bitcoin. I showed you in previous iterations of this that the sentiment on each of these dips is improving. And then we got this week into the month, and certainly into the monthly close. And it was and we even had a bullish monthly close on Bitcoin, which I showed you on Wednesday. And then the bottom fell out of the market over the course of the last 2 days. Look, this is what happens when it's a thin market and and the banks have futures contracts. I mean, Goldman comes out on Friday and says Bitcoin's going to new lows, and then all of a sudden Bitcoin gets bopped by $1,500. You don't think that Goldman was in there selling aggressively into strength in order to try and pick more up in this range? You're out of your mind. I also told you that this breakout was not indicative of a new bull market or anything, that it was just indicative of a potential long-term bottom forming here in Bitcoin. So looks like this week we got that. So this is a 2-bar reversal, and this is a 1-bar reversal right after it. You'll probably see some more weakness here early in the week as a new trading band begins to form. And I would hope that the trading band forms between 7 and 8,000 and not in the 6,000s. If we start to see a new trading band between 7 and 8,000, that will be bullish because that will mark a higher low on this impulse wave up, which would be good. All right, that's pretty much what I have for this morning. We'll be back on Wednesday with another report on this. You can see you can see some of the numbers for Bitcoin. I didn't get that chart. I didn't get that text box properly formatted. I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to be putting these up on Wednesday as well. But this week's not going to be bullish for Bitcoin in the short term. So that's what I have for this week. We'll be back on Wednesday. You guys take care. We'll talk soon, and keep your stick on the ice.